Okay, now we're going to talk about declining nouns. If you ask your father about declining nouns, he will start singing a ridiculous song that sounds a little bit like Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo and Bada-minus and Boobadaba and silly things like that. And tell him that his math makes as little sense as Latin declining does, so we're even, okay? But all declining a noun means is you're going to just basically put it in the appropriate endings for each of the cases. So typically speaking, when you decline a noun, what you're going to do is you're going to put it in nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, and ablative, and singular and plural. And as I said to you, once you learn the first declension endings, they're exactly the same. Once you learn second, exactly the same. Once you learn third, exactly the same. The sooner you have those memorized, the happier life will be. I tell my students all the time, like if you kind of just cram it and then forget it and cram and forget it, you're going to be in deep trouble. That's what I did with German. I crammed, I forgot it, and to this day, I don't know any German. So I would just say the sooner you can get these memorized so that if somebody asks you real fast, what is this ending? You can recognize it, or please decline this noun, and you can do it. You'll be in great shape. Okay, so before we talk about declining nouns, however, I need to just go backwards and teach you one more thing about declensions that I didn't want to teach you earlier because I didn't want you to be scared. Okay, so I gave you in the 2 videos ago, I gave you 3 nouns. I gave you rana, which means frog, and taurus, which means bull, and let's do walks, which means voice. Okay, so the reason you know that rana is first declension is it ends in A. The reason you know that taurus is second declension, it ends in US. The reason you know the walks is third declension is because it's weird and it has a weird ending. So, which is all fine and well. But in order to decline a noun, you also need to know what the stem of the noun is. And that's going to be the base that you're going to add all the endings onto. Now, the good news is, for first and second declension, it's really easy. Third declension, though, very often the stem is spelled differently than this nominative form that you're given. So you will usually, when you look a word up in the dictionary, or if your teacher asks you to decline something, usually you will be given 2 forms. And it'll look like this: rana, ranai, and then it'll tell you what gender it is, feminine. Taurus, tauri, and that's masculine, and walks, walkus, and that's feminine. So what this is number 1, this first form is always the nominative singular. So if you ever have to decline a noun, you can just copy this form into the nominative singular box, and it's a piece of cake. This second form is the genitive singular. So same thing, if you are asked to decline a noun, you can just copy this form into the genitive singular box, and that's given to you. But the other really important thing about this genitive singular form is this is where you get the stem from. And the stem of a noun is the genitive singular form with the genitive ending off. So the genitive ending for first declension is AE, so the stem is RAN. Yes, you can get that from the nominative, but it's good to get in the habit of just going to the second form because you're going to do that with verbs as well. The genitive singular of taurus is tauri. That's the ending, so that means the stem is taur, T-A-U-R. And the genitive ending of walks, the genitive ending is is. So this tells you that the stem of walks is VOC. So this is the nominative, but every other case is going to be added to VOC. So you just have to get in the habit of that. So let's just start. I'm going to start with the first declension, and I'm going to decline rana just for you. I'm going to give you all of the macrons or the long marks that show up. Then I'll tell you which ones I think are the most important, depending on how many your teacher requires. You may have to memorize them all. So, but if I were to ask you, say decline rana, the first thing that you would do is you would just copy down the nominative and the accusative. okay? Rana, ranai. The next thing you do is you write the stem in all the other boxes. And because that's what you're going to add the endings onto. And then the third thing is you're going to add what are called the first declension endings. So, and again, as long as you know the stem of a noun, and you know it's first declension, these endings are going to be, on every first declension noun. So, so the dative singular for first declension is AE, the accusative singular is AM, and the ablative singular is A with a long mark. That's a super important long mark because it helps you differentiate between this A and the non-long mark, the short A in the nominative. The nominative plural is AE. The genitive plural is ARUM. The dative plural is IS. The accusative plural is AS. And the ablative plural is IS. So again, these long marks are basically, they're telling you, an A without a long mark is like a different vowel than an A with a long mark. The Romans didn't actually have long marks, or they're called macrons as well, because they just knew naturally what was long and what was short, in the same way that, like, we know that hat is pronounced hat, whereas hate is pronounced hate because it ends in an E. A non-English speaker may need extra help to know that, like, this is a long A, whereas this is a short A. So the macrons are actually a post-ancient invention to help people understand the difference between long and short vowels. So the endings are, I, is, as, is. A couple rules that I'm going to tell you is that the dative and ablative plural of any noun will always be exactly the same. That's one rule. Another rule is that the accusative plural will always be the ablative singular plus an S, if that helps you. Not always, the long marks don't always work out, but in, I think, 4 of the 5 declensions they do. So if ablative is A with a long mark, accusative plural is going to be A with a long mark plus S. As you might imagine, the tricky thing here is that we've got 3 AE endings. So we've got genitive, dative, and nominative plural. And the tough thing about Latin, like if all the endings were distinctive, it would be a piece of cake, is if you see a noun that ends in AE, you have to use context to figure out, is it going to be of the frog, is it going to be to or for the frog, or is it going to be the frogs are doing something? So that's where, you have to learn the endings, and then you have to think, okay, this ends in AE, is it genitive singular, dative singular, nominative plural, and then you look in the context of the sentence to figure that out. So, first declension endings, I, is, as, is. For me, the most important long marks to remember are this guy here, because it tells you that it's ablative, not nominative A, and then these two here, because, as I showed you before, the third declension genitive ends in IS, but it does not have a long mark. So those are good macrons to know the difference between dative or ablative plural versus a genitive third declension. But your teacher may have you memorize all of them, so just buckle up. And Fun Daisy just walked up, so I'm going to let her jump up on the couch, and I'm going to pause this because I've already talked too much, and we'll do second and third declension in the next video.